It's another edition of Time About the Movies. Today we're taking a look at the films of Thanksgiving weekend 2002. We've got 5 big movies to look at today, so let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and jump on into it. And we'll start off with I guess you could say, the biggest, in quotation marks, new release of the weekend. Disney had a lot of high hopes for this one, and not so much. This was back before they were a regular contributor to the Thanksgiving holiday weekend and would usually have successes, but this one, not so much at first, but let's talk about Treasure Planet. So like I said, coming off of Lilo and Stitch was one of their big hits between Tarzan and then eventually before they switched over to the last of their produced era of Disney films, where they kind of had their third renaissance, if you will. This was kind of a big deal that this did not do so well. I mean, it didn't do badly with critics overall. It got overall positive reviews, but the film was a flop in terms of box office. I mean, it cost $140 million to make, and it only made $38 million in the U.S. and just made shy of $110 million worldwide. So, not overall the best overall, not really the best outcome for this particular film. But it's made by the same guys that did The Little Mermaid. It's made by the same guys that did Aladdin, Hercules. They usually make some pretty good movies, and this film it's about what you think it is. It's a science fiction version of Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. Just take the story of Treasure Island and add space elements to it. I mean, it's literally what this movie is, and a lot of good concepts overall and ideas, but to the execution just doesn't quite work as well as I think it does. I mean, I think really the strongest highlights of the film are the animation. I think this is probably the best thing about the entire movie. It's incredible the way this animation looks. It's a perfect blending of 2D and CG animation rolled into one, and it doesn't feel like two sides are coming together and it's not blending together. They do a pretty good job of meshing this very nicely together. It feels like you don't see any of the major flaws coming together here, but it really is one of the stronger elements of the film, if not the strongest element overall. A good voice cast overall. That's Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Jim Hawkins. You got Brian Doyle Murray, David Hyde Pierce, Emma Thompson, Laurie Metcalf, Patrick McGoogan, Roscoe Lee Brown, Martin Short, doing a pretty good job with the material given to them. The visuals were impressive. The music by James Newton Howard is nicely done. I mean, there are elements here where there are winning elements to it, so why doesn't it live up to that promise overall? And to me, what I think it comes down to is that the story really isn't all that strong. It feels like there's too many predictable cliches and lame story twists that kind of come out of nowhere. And you think an idea of Treasure Island space would lead to a lot of creative and inventive possibilities in terms of where to go. But a lot of the times, it's just stuff taken from the book, except add space elements to it. We've seen it done to death, the story, countless times in various different ways. I mean, the Muppets did a Treasure Island movie, which is probably, at least in my opinion, I think that's a lot more fun and a lot more creative in what they did there. There's very little creativity in terms of the story overall, and that's where the movie suffers. A lack of an interesting story, a lack of a villain too. Like you have now I can't remember his name, John Silver in here, who's a cyborg, and you think he's going to be the big bad guy because he's the bad guy in the storyline, but he's not really the big bad guy in the movie. The real bad guy of the film kind of gets taken out pretty early on in the second half. It's just like they just get rid of him, and then the last third of the film is just like, okay, we're going to set this guy up as possibly a villain down the road, but we're going to still pretend that we're going to still assume that he still has a relationship with Jim that we've been setting up here. It's very confusing how they handled the climax of the film, and even when I watched it again a couple years ago on Disney Plus for the first time in a long time, even I still couldn't figure out what they were trying to go for here. I mean, you would figure that after the couple times I've seen it, I would figure it out, but now I still can't figure it out even after all this time. Ron Clements and John Musker, these are two very talented directors. They've made a lot of great movies at Disney. You expect them to have a good idea of how to tell a good story, but here, it really feels like the story was on autopilot for them. They thought that the simple concept of Treasure Island in space would write itself, and really it doesn't, and it really hurts the ebb and flow of the film. Everything else about Treasure Island works fine as it is. It's a nicely animated film, well acted, visually impressive to look at, but it just needed a better story and better ideas to really kick it into high gear. And at least to me personally, I don't think it holds up as well as I think most people hold it up as. I mean, this thing still has a cult following even after all these years. Like, it's why I keep saying something like Strange World, which I actually really enjoyed. got thrashed by critics and audiences, but I'm telling people that's going to be a movie that will have legs going forward as a cult film. If Treasure Planet can have the legs as a cult film, Strange World can definitely have those legs as well. Wish 2, maybe, but still too early to tell about that one. But that's Treasure Planet, and they were not the only animated film to come out this weekend. Disney had some competition this weekend with Sony, and with that we have Adam Sandler's 8 Crazy Nights. So you can kind of see why this movie has a very puzzling reaction from most people. Adam Sandler basically stars as a 33-year-old party animal, finds himself in trouble with the law after his wild ways go too far, and in keeping with the holiday spirit, the judge gives Davey one last chance at redemption with this guy named Whitey Duvall, who's also voiced by Adam Sandler. And, you know, things don't go as they should at first, and you start to think that maybe he's going to turn it around, and then gotta have the third act breakup, and then it's going to be the moment where he realizes that maybe I am an asshole, and maybe I do need to change my ways, but, you kind of know where the story's going to go from here. And you got to remember something about this time period. We just talked about it with Treasure Planet. 2002 was the beginning of the downward spiral for hand-drawn animation at the box office. I mean, it wasn't that big threat anymore because CG was slowly but surely beginning to creep up again. And the technology for CG was getting better and better. Disney had released Treasure Planet, which ended up becoming a financial failure for them. And the fact that somebody was going to do an Adam Sandler comedy using animation in the style of like the classic TV specials and all that, it's always going to be a risky experiment to work with. And naturally, a lot of people were not too receptive to this movie. I mean, it did decent numbers at the box office, but considering what Adam Sandler's movies usually do, they were probably expecting something more in the lines of what Mr. Deeds or Big Daddy did. But it's also been considered one of the worst Christmas movies of all time, but not only that, one of the worst animated movies of all time. And truth be told, I can't really disagree with them on that front. It is not that great of a film, but I've seen far worse than this movie, and honestly, I think the movie does actually work a lot better than most people probably would give it credit for. For one thing, it's unusually gorgeous. Like, this is a film that really, this animation studio that put the film together really actually tried and made a lot of effort to make this look as great as it could be, but considering what else is going into it, like, it's too good looking for a movie of this caliber. And I give Adam Sandler a lot of credit here. For the most part, he's doing a pretty good job of, you know, ranging his voice a little bit. Maybe not with Whitey, because Whitey's just him going at the high-pitched voice, but Eleanor, I thought he did a pretty good job of changing his voice around to get that impression that it is indeed somebody else. I mean, it wasn't the greatest overall, but at least he was trying, at least with her. But the songs themselves are also surprisingly really good, too. They're catchy songs. And they're nicely handled with a good score by Teddy Castellucci. And you have the Ellises, Mark and Ray Ellis, who the latter actually worked with Filmation in the past on, I guess, on music too. But it's kind of amazing how much these songs hold up. Now, of course, the songs in the film. I mean, there are, like, I just talked about the songs. What am I talking about? There are negatives I can agree with most people on. For one thing, neither Davey nor Whitey are kind of likable characters, and you try to find sympathy with these guys, but each of them gets so annoying, and they just have no charisma to them whatsoever. And you watch both of them and get this feeling like these two deserve everything that they're getting to them. And like, Davey's too much of a crazed, drunken idiot. Excuse me. that you have no real sympathy for. I mean, yeah, his parents are dead, but you know what? Doesn't mean you have to have some likability to you. And Whitey's too much of a weakling that just can't stand up for himself, that by the end, you never feel like that satisfaction that his reward is fully justified. Like, you know, everybody's giving him their patches and all. Like, you don't really buy into it. The biggest problem with the movie is that it's padded out for no reason whatsoever. And it's 76 minutes long, and there's padding in this. And by padding, I'm talking about the padding that was just in the 2018 Grinch movie, which is a movie I like, and I think is a much better film, but it's where you put them. Actually, no, this is not the 2018. This is not the 2018 Grinch I'm thinking about. This is the 2000s Grinch I'm thinking about. It's pulling that BS again. Like I said before, I like the 2018 Grinch, and I like the 2000 Grinch too, but they do this thing where you think the main hero's finally going to turn around and be a good guy, and then somebody brings up the past, and he snaps and goes back to his old ways, and the entire segment that came beforehand proves absolutely pointless. In that 2000 Grinch movie, that took up 30 minutes of the runtime. This thing is much shorter than that, and it still felt like You just wasted your time doing absolutely nothing. They do that here. You know, Whitey brings up the tragic story about how his parents were killed in a black ice accident. And Davy, who had been reformed at this point, goes back to his douchebag ways with the stories brought up again, you know, making the last 10 minutes of the movie 100% pointless. I mean, you could have taken that out of the movie and nothing would have been lost. And I know what you're thinking. Wouldn't that take away from the purpose of the movie? Well, yeah, but again, fill that time up with something more interesting and exciting. But no. No, we can't do that. We've got to go down the cliched route, and the movie suffers because of it. And you, like I said before, it doesn't help that you have no sympathy for either of the two main characters here, Davy or Whitey, whatsoever. I don't think this movie is bad, but it definitely is a film that has a lot of flaws to it. I don't think it deserves the huge backlash it gets. It's got its moments that make it somewhat watchable, but it does hurt a lot, and it definitely hurts the film overall. And it's a film that, if it's part of an AMC, you know how AMC does that Christmas thing now, and it'll usually show up on there? If there's literally nothing else on, I'll pop it in and watch it. But other than that, though, it's just one of those ones where I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be, but it's got a lot of notable flaws to it. It's a movie that I kind of have a little bit of a soft spot for it, but at the same time, I completely agree with a lot of the people's criticisms about the movie. It is not a great film by any means necessary, but it's one of those ones I kind of go back to every once in a while. There's nothing else on TV, I'll just watch that movie, and I usually will come out feeling okay about it, but yeah, the story overall is just really one of the biggest problems with the film in general, and among with other things as well. But so yeah, 8 Crazy Nights. So let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, which is George Clooney in the James Cameron-Steven Soderbergh collaboration, Solaris. So this is somewhat of a remake of a 1972 Andrei Tarkovsky film of the same name, which is actually based off of a book by Stacey Lame, and this is actually more closer to the novel itself. You have a story that's set almost entirely on a space station orbiting the planet Solaris. You had flashbacks to the previous experiences of the main characters on Earth, and its protagonist, played by George Clooney, struggles with the questions of Solaris' movements, his belief in memories, and reconciling what was lost with an opportunity for a second chance. And, you know how we had Alita Battle Angel not too long ago, and one of my biggest complaints with that movie was that it was a collaboration between James Cameron and Robert Rodriguez, two very different creative minds coming together, and it's a film that I thought didn't work as well as I think a lot of people thought it did, because you have two different minds coming together on it. Solaris is another one of those movies that I feel like is on that same wavelength. It's a film that has the writing of is the production of James Cameron behind it as the producer, and then Steven Soderbergh wrote and directed the film, and it's two worlds clashing together in an element where I feel like the film didn't really have a good idea of what they were trying to accomplish here. I never saw the original movie. I never saw I never read the novel, so I don't really know how close of an adaptation this actually is. But coming out of it, I felt like there really wasn't a whole lot there in general here. I thought George Clooney overall. It's George Clooney. George Clooney can usually take anything and make it work well. And I really like Nastasia McKelvey from Californication in here as the love interest, which, I mean, those elements sometimes do work overall, but it is a film that really doesn't really give you the whole ebb and flow of what I think they're trying to accomplish here. It's a short movie, too. It's barely over an hour and a half long. So it's not the film's fault in general in terms of the runtime. It's just the way it's presented. Like, from a visual perspective, it looks fine. From a story perspective, kind of like with some of the other movies we've already looked at, that's where I think the film really does start to flounder a bit, because there's nothing really that engaging or interesting to really go in there with. Like, you don't really have any mesmerizing ideas to work with here, and you kind of leave it kind of bored by when it was also everything that was coming out of it. I certainly was bored by it, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know how most people feel about it, but got decent reviews overall, but nothing too spectacular. For me personally, I just thought it was just mediocre. I really expected a lot more from George Clooney, Steven Soderbergh, and James Cameron, but this is what we have here, and it's probably a mixed opinion on that one. Not bad, but certainly not the great film that I think it could have been, considering the talent on board. Speaking of movies, now let's go to movies that actually have no real good ideas to it, and it feels like somebody is ripping off his own work. It's Wes Craven presents They. Stop me if you've heard this before. The plot of the movie is centering around a group of 4 adults experiencing night terrors and attempting to deal with the fallout from their prior childhood experiences. Older people experiencing nightmares from their past. Gee, I wonder what Wes Craven project that came from. As you can pretty much tell, this is nothing but a ripoff of A Nightmare on Elm Street, and not even a good ripoff of A Nightmare on Elm Street, because, you know, at least the bad Nightmare on Elm Street movies had fun aspects to it. Okay, and to be fair to Wes Craven, it wasn't even a film that he was actually behind the writing or directing of. He was just the producer, and this was back in that time when, you know, I guess everybody wanted to have the next Stephen King Presents, and this is like, Wes Craven Presents, like, that's supposed to mean something, but most of the movies that had his name on there as part of that Wes Craven Presents thing, 9 times out of 10, the film did not do very well in the long run. It was often usually seen as a forgettable mess in general. But here's another example of that. It's a movie that there's just nothing there that really makes it worth it when it's all said and done. There's no thrill factor to it. There's nothing that interesting about it. The writing overall is predictable horror movie crap. It's just not intriguing whatsoever. It's nothing exciting, nothing interesting. Why are you even opening this movie on Thanksgiving weekend? When is the last time a horror movie did well on Thanksgiving weekend at all? And, yeah, this thing crashed and burned at the box office big time. And, like, if you can't even make back your own budget of $17 million, then you really screwed the pooch on this one. So, not much more to say about that one. It's a mostly forgettable film, and that is Wes Craven Presents Day. So let's go ahead and wrap it up with another forgettable film, and that is Extreme Ops. Before anybody asks, that was the video itself. That was not me. That was not my camera working over there. And I actually had to replay that clip again to make sure that wasn't me. That was not me. That was how that commercial actually panned out. And I don't know if something was going on with the video there, but it doesn't help the movie in the long run, because the film itself is, again, it's another piece of crap movie where you have a commercial director and 3 extreme sports athletes who embark on this trip to the Alps for seasonal practice and stunt filming. They unknowingly film at the same location that serves as the hideout for Serbia's most wanted criminals, and subsequently employ their fast-paced extreme sports abilities to escape the treacherous mountain and save their lives. Which, this is one of the stupidest movies I've ever seen. This is a terrible, terrible movie, and like, this makes Vertical Limit look like a masterpiece by comparison. Cliffhanger is a much better movie than this. I feel like that's what they were ripping off here. Because you know what, at least Cliffhanger had Sylvester Stallone, had a badass villain played by John Lithgow, and it had some pretty badass action sequences. You don't get any of that in this fucking movie whatsoever, but what do you expect from the director of The Art of War with Wesley Snipes? And it'd be nice to have some actors that actually could make this work instead of Devon Sawa, Brigitte Wilson, Rupert Graves, and Rufus Sewell. But, actually, no, that's kind of about it. This is a dull movie, and a mercifully short film, too, but just like with, Solaris, and a lot of these movies we've looked at here, nothing really happens in here that you haven't seen done already. There's no fun factor here whatsoever. It's a bland film. Nothing of interest happens. You don't like any of these characters. The villain is a cheap cartoon, even though he's a real person. I got nothing else for you, man. This is a terrible, terrible movie. Yeah, avoid extreme ops like the plague. So finally, we head to the last month of 2002. On the next episode, we'll jump into December with 4 movies, including the sequel everybody was asking for, Billy Crystal and Robert De Niro, and Analyze That. We also have John Leguizamo in Empire, Kurt Wimmer's Equilibrium, and we also have Spike Jonze's adaptation with Nicolas Cage and Chris Cooper and Meryl Streep, and also Tilda Swinton, Judy Greer. Yeah, so we'll take a look at all 4 of those movies on the next episode. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the plays on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. And still to come later tonight, we have a new episode of Time About the Movies Flashback for you, where we'll take a look at 5 more movies, including 5 movies from 1988, April 15th to be exact. Tax Day that day is that year. We have Colors, we have Return to Snowy River, Appointment with Death, Plain Clothes, and The Modern. So we'll take a look at all 5 of those movies, hopefully on Time About the Movies Flashback, which will be coming up right after this.